So the GOP says it is time for Joe Biden to go. If only someone could have seen this coming. Let's talk about it. So the GOP are now saying that Joe Biden has got to get out of here. They want to remove him from office because of the disaster that we have seen, specifically regarding this evacuation of Afghanistan. As most of you all know at this point, the terrorist group ISIS-K was the group allegedly responsible for the bombing that recently happened near the Kabul airport that resulted in dozens of Afghan people dying, innocent Afghan people dying, and at least 12 Marines as well. Now, that might seem like the real reason as to why they want him out, but there are a lot of weird circumstances that we have to kind of discuss here, right? But before we get into those circumstances, I'm explaining to you really quick, or let myself explain to you all on behalf of myself, why I don't think that it's because of the Kabul incident and that this might have been a play on the field the entire time. Let's check out an interview where I actually predicted in 2020 that this was going to happen, exactly how it's playing out.
Kamala, either the de facto president or maybe if something happens to make her president?
No, I actually think that is the play. Actually, Biden made it very clear where he said that the person who takes over as VP or the person who he nominates as VP needs to be ready to be president on day one. Like he said that. Obama said that in a call with a bunch of donors. So they're anticipating the person, whoever becomes VP, is going to be the president. Either it's during Obama's or Biden's administration, the first iteration, or potentially whoever comes next if they do win that election. And that's kind of scary for me because if they win this, then you basically have a Kamala Harris administration. But because she didn't run for office and win the nomination, she could potentially, the worst case scenario, have 3 years as president, then run again, and then run again. We could be stuck in a perpetual neoliberal nightmare that we didn't elect, basically.
Why didn't she win the nomination?
Well, to be frank, because...
So, yeah, that's crazy, right? I know it's almost as if it's too easy, like they're very predictable. Niko Diamond strikes again. But in all seriousness, the reason that I made that prediction was primarily to do with the fact that Kamala Harris was indeed selected in 2017 by all of Hillary Clinton's donors at the Hamptons. We've all, at least at this point, I feel like most of us have heard that story. So some people would say, why would 24 GOP members in the House and in the Senate want Kamala Harris to replace Joe Biden? Well, the first theory is, since when are the GOP and Democrats actually enemies? See, remember there's a thing called controlled opposition, and the operative word being opposition. In order to have controlled opposition, you have to have someone pretending to be the adversary of the other side in order to convince people in situations like this that if the GOP wants Joe Biden out and is okay with Kamala and they hate Kamala, then things must be that bad and Kamala must be the president that we need. Or else the GOP would have never suggested such a thing. That's what they would do. That's the reaction that they're expecting. It's very similar to whenever they initiated that joke of an impeachment against Trump, because he was working with the president of the Ukraine to investigate former corrupt members of the Obama administration who had also leaked over into the former Ukrainian administration before Zelensky took over. So remember, they got Mitt Romney on board, and they got a couple of other GOP, and then they had a few of the old guard from the neocons come out and talk about how disappointed they were in Trump, because that's what controlled opposition is. That's what it is. So now you have to consider the fact that the GOP is putting on a ruse because the powers that be have already told us who they really wanted. But unfortunately for Kamala and for us, well, fortunately for us, unfortunately for Kamala, she had to take a more unique path to her eventual and potential presidency. Because along her first path, she ran into the buzzsaw that is named Tulsi Gabbard. She went from being widely supported by black people to only 2% by the end of that week after that debate. And so now she has to take a more traditional path. And I've said time and time again, it's terrifying to know that the American people gave Kamala Harris a resounding no to such a degree that she didn't even make it to the Democratic primary, people. She didn't make it to the primary. And yet somehow they thought, yo, it would actually be a good strategy to pick perhaps the most unpopular candidate on stage, at least out of the, the top tier candidates. Get it, Kamala, top tier, because you were top tier and then you weren't. Yeah, anyway. But it was not a good strategy to pick one of the most unpopular candidates on stage out of the top tier performers and then make her VP as if that's supposed to draw votes when people didn't like her. Because that is just them telling us, yeah, we know that y'all didn't want her, but we want her, so we don't really care. That's what they're showing. Now, the other strategy is, right, how do you get more GOP members on board with this? Maybe some, like, I can't say Ted Cruz. He's definitely part of the establishment. But, there are some GOP members who are a little bit lower on the totem pole who can't really see themselves getting behind Joe Biden or Kamala because their disdain for either of them, or specifically Kamala Harris, because their disdain for Kamala is genuine, even if they do hate Joe Biden in the way he handled this situation in Afghanistan. How do you get them on board? Well, I just told you, Kamala Harris is wildly unpopular. Wildly unpopular. And yet and still, people believe the Democratic Party is still going to try to run her as president. Who do you think is more beatable? The man who has 4 years of good old corruption, has demonstrated his loyalty to the system, and quite frankly, his influence over not just our foreign policy, but our electoral system and all the major elite players in that system. You think he's easier to beat? And a white guy, like, let's be honest, right? An old white guy, because old white guys who are sex pests and segregationists all the way up to the top. He might even become president one day. Is that guy easier to beat than the woman who cackles like a hyena that has a Tweety bird stuck in her throat every time she's asked a tough question? The woman who didn't even make it past the primary. Like, not past, she didn't make it to the election of the Democratic primary, and she was a top tier candidate. The woman whose record is now been hyper scrutinized because of the social media era that we live in, and has been highlighted not just by leftists in general, but specifically by the black people that they would hope are going to vote for her. And the woman, to be frank, who is a woman of color, who is, for all intents and purposes, a black woman, who will be more scrutinized because this is unfortunately still the world that we live in. And the GOP are fully aware of that. So now you get the truly powerful controlled opposition to push Joe Biden out, and you get the GOP members that may not be involved in this decision, if you catch my drift, to get behind this idea by pitching the strategy that it is easier to beat a Kamala Harris in the 2024 election if she gets past the primary, than it would be to beat a Joe Biden if he decided to repeat. And if Kamala takes over, by the way, I did make a mistake in that video. It has to be 2 years and a day. Then she could serve the rest of that 2 years, run again, and then run again. And if Kamala gets the presidency, she's not going to be a one-term president. That's not what her goal is. If Kamala doesn't get it, then she is more beatable, perhaps by somebody who could be a bigger threat to the GOP. But if she wins the presidency, or is given the presidency, then she's a little bit easier to beat because she's going to run again. Now, what makes this all the more suspect before we get out of here is the fact that Kamala Harris, negligible foreign policy experience would be a very, very charitable description. She's gutter trash on foreign policy, easily manipulated on foreign policy, has no idea what she's doing. She's overseas negotiating with countries in East Asia, trying to get them to stop being allies with China and instead becoming more economically allied, at least with the US. And she's basically being booed off stage everywhere she goes. They don't take her seriously. She has no understanding of what's happening in Central and South America, nor does she understand what's going on at the border truly. She has no negotiation skills. She was a prosecutor. She only knows how to talk down to and at people. She doesn't know how to negotiate her way into a better deal or a better situation. So why would the GOP think that Kabul in Afghanistan and the withdrawal that happened there would be better under Kamala? They don't. But Wall Street would be a lot better under Kamala. Foreign policy and the generals that really run foreign policy, the chiefs of staff that truly run foreign policy, they would be able to do what the hell they wanted to without question, without challenge. And also, once again, to convince people that, yeah, she's going to be bad, so you should get Joe Biden out because she's easier to beat. So there's definitely a multi-pronged approach that's going to be taken by the GOP. But once again, somebody saw this coming, and a lot of people call me a crazy conspiracy theorist for acknowledging basic and obvious patterns that we've seen. Because once again, ladies and gentlemen, if the establishment hasn't taught us anything, it taught us one thing, if not anything else. They're predictable. If you're paying enough attention, you're being objective, you're viewing things through a post-partisan lens, not one through either left or right or Democrat or Republican. If you're truly viewing all of these circumstances and situations through a post-partisan lens, it's easy to see what the play on the field was. They made a big deal. They called her the front runner before as soon as she announced it. She wasn't. She really wasn't. Even as her and Bernie Sanders were going, Bernie Sanders into the race, he was raising more individual money. He had more support, obviously more name recognition, more popularity. And they were still trying to sell her as the most popular candidate. CNN, Turner and CNN gave her ridiculous amounts of coverage, disproportionately so. Gave her crazy town hall events, gave her easy question at those town hall events. Turner, the corporation, the network that basically pays for CNN, donated more money to Kamala than anybody else. Right? 2017, they selected her. Hillary Clinton's donor selected her at the Hamptons. Maya Harris, Kamala's sister, was the third chief advisor to Hillary Clinton's campaign. The corrupt fall up. It was obvious to see that this was a path that Kamala was going to take to the presidency, and that this was a path that the powers that be, the post-partisan powers that be, because I promise you, they are not partisan in their approach. They just convince us that they are. They selected Kamala Harris. Therefore, they are going to give us Kamala Harris, even if we have to go kicking and screaming. Like this video, share this video, leave a comment below, but always remember, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.